What we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party.
1, 2, 3, and the place to be is the BKMC, the MCEO, Talib Kweli. That's right, this is the world's best podcast, The People's Party. And as always, and as usual, I got the world's best co-host, my lovely and talented and thoughtful and thought-provoking partner, Jasmin Leigh, in the place to be. What's up, Jasmin? How you feeling?
You know, I'm feeling pretty hot because we're back in the studio and I got my Taylor Chanel back, so my makeup is on point.
That sounds like when you go to the
things.
Chinese restaurant and it says delicious fried rice. You're like, nigga, let me decide whether or not it's delicious. Don't write delicious on the menu.
You know what, Talib? I'm going to take, you know, I quit. I quit.
We're going to have a good time today. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to having. This is one I've been wanting to have for a long time with this gentleman that is the guest on the show today. He is an acclaimed actor, a serious activist. You may know him as Nathan Campbell in the very, 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 very brilliant hit show Insecure, or Brainstorm if you're like me and you're a fan of The Flash, or Caleb Hapstall if you're a fan of How to Get Away with Murder. He's also appeared in Supernatural, The Vampire Diaries, Grace Point, and that's just scratching the surface of this man's career. Last year, he was in Miss Juneteenth, an underrated movie. I think it got a little lost in the quarantine. We're going to talk about this. When I said this man is an activist, I was not kidding. I was not exaggerating. A lot of people have that word on their resumes or in their Twitter or their Instagram bios, but our guest today has been deeply involved with Black Lives Matter. He's incredibly close with People's Party guests Patrisse Cullors and Melina Abdullah. These are friends of the show. We love them as well. Last year, he was at marches all through Los Angeles, speaking at protests, standing up for justice, and even co-founding his own organization, Build Power, to connect actors, athletes, entertainers to the movement. It's great anytime someone uses their platform to drive social change, but this guest's commitment is a day in, day out process. He takes no days off. It doesn't stop, even when the media looks away, and that's the type of person that I personally respect. In June of 2020, our guest wrote an open letter to Hollywood, co-written by Tessa Thompson, Melina Abdullah, and Patrisse Cullors, that we as Black people bring immense, immeasurable cultural and economic value to the industry. We are also suffering from the oppression perpetuated by this industry. We have every right to demand change. He has called on Hollywood executives to examine how they perpetuate a culture of anti-Blackness, and he has impressed upon people the need to divest from the police while investing in Black communities. Ladies and gentlemen, please offer a warm welcome to the Ghost Bay himself, Kendrick Sampson, in the place to be. What's up, Kendrick?
That was by far the best introduction I've ever heard of myself.
Good, you should bring me on the road with you. I should come out whenever you have meetings, whenever you're trying to negotiate, I'll come out and say that.
I have not earned that opening yet. You? Yeah, man.
Well, thank you for being on our show.
I appreciate you having me. Honored to be here.
No doubt. You were raised in Houston, Texas.
H-Town.
H-Town.
Yeah.
I got peoples in H-Town.
Yeah.
Me too.
And Mo City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mo City down like zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
No doubt. You left Houston and moved to LA to join the Robey Theatre Company, which is named after Paul Robeson. Now, you know about plays, Black plays, because that's what that theater was about. I have a play idea. Maybe you can go in on this with me.
Okay.
Have you ever heard Paul Robeson speak at the House of Un-American Activities Committee in front of Congress?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a play.
Yeah.
That's like 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
Like no one has done that yet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We should put that together.
I'm down.
All right, we'll talk about that
why
after the
they
show.
ain't
Yeah, I know why. But I encourage anybody who hasn't listened to that to go listen to that.
Yeah.
Because it's an intense piece of listening, and it sounds, because he had that stage voice.
Yeah.
But he's smarter than all of them. He's smarter than anybody in the room.
Absolutely.
He has to struggle more. He struggled more than anybody in the room, and he's traveled all over the world. Right. None of them haven't been nowhere. He's talking about Russia,
right? And
he's just like so far above over their heads.
Absolutely. And just unapologetic.
Unapologetically Black with his shit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's dope.
He's incredible. He's huge inspiration and very indicative of where my journey was gonna go. I joined in 18, I think, and
18 you were when you joined that theater. They were focused on Black theaters and Black plays, right? And plays like written by Black people and stuff. What are some of those plays from that era that really impacted you?
Man, so it was co-founded by Danny Glover.
Hey, in my notes, what does it say? It says, make sure to shout out Danny Glover.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that he was connected with that. But when I think about your path and black actors doing the type of social actors, Danny Glover is the gold standard.
Yeah. And I've ran around with him, in politics and activism. Huge inspiration. Man, yeah. Of course, we were studying August Wilson and such, but it was mostly they were looking at building up the next generation of playwrights, like black playwrights, and so we worked with up and coming talent in LA who wanted to be playwrights, and some of them were great, some of them
as it goes
was our art,
it's building people up.
Yeah,
got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and we were growing together, and it was incredible. I don't think anything else made me grow more than being involved with that theater company. And they taught me about Toussaint Louverture. They taught me about revolutionaries, and set me up for my journey in exploring who Paul Robeson was and what he meant to the movement for liberation, and also to art, and really informed what I wanted to do with my career.
No doubt. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a Christian.
Yeah. And
you attend an Ethiopian church?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
A certain point.
Yeah. Well, I always struggle with that term Christian, but I do subscribe to the teachings of Jesus and in the Bible, from my interpretation of them, from how I've read through the Bible several times, and I know that churches misinterpret and use and exploit those teachings for their business and many other political reasons and such that we could talk about, that are actually counter to Black liberation.
Absolutely.
I went to the first 4 years I was here. While I was with that theater company, I was trying to find what I believed in, exploring all these different religions, but one of the my go-tos, my only social life really, was going to this Ethiopian Bible study with these young Ethiopian kids. And we would just tear apart the Bible. We would just, verse by verse, we would just talk about it. We all had different translations, and we would just talk about it from 9 p.m.
You all had different translations. That's interesting.
Yeah, different translations, different versions, from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the morning. And then we would go eat. And that was my Friday night for 4 years.
That's interesting to me because a lot of people don't know the Ethiopian origins of Christianity.
Yeah.
People associate it with, just white American, the buddy Christ.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or this like white nationalist Christ. They don't understand the origins of it. Are you familiar with
oppressive Christ?
Yeah, that guy. You familiar with the Black Theology and Black Power? This book that talks about like Black liberation theology.
Maybe
it's a guy named James Cone. He wrote a book called Black Theology and Black Power, and he's talking about liberation theology, which started with Catholics back in the days, like white people back in the days, but this guy and people after him, and now I guess the guy who would represent that philosophy now would be like a Reverend Barber.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That guy.
That's great, yeah.
Cornel West is the type of dude, like liberation theology, which they take the teachings of Jesus the Christ and apply them to marginalized people,
right,
to oppressed people, and say, if you're not on the side of oppressed people,
right, exactly,
you're not really following the lead of Jesus the Christ.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I kind of settled on. This is what I believe was. I realized Jesus rolled around with thugs, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like he was
Goonie Goo Goo.
Yeah, he was like, I'm going around. He wasn't like, hey, let's go where the privileged are, right? He wasn't, people who were sex workers and and he just talked to them, and he went around and healed folks. He was all about liberating folks and healing folks. That's it. Yeah. That's what his whole life was. And I know a lot of people talk about the name of Jesus, right? And I realized a lot of time I was like, what is the name of Jesus? And, you know, because it's said different, and it's Yeshua, Jesus, you know, different languages, they say it different ways. And so it can't be the sound that has the power, right?
Right.
Like the power in the name of Jesus. It's not just saying the word Jesus, right?
Right.
It's in what it represents, right? Of liberation. It's leaving this world better than you found it. It's making sure people are liberated and healed, right? And people misuse and misinterpret it so much and abuse it so much and talk about this central idea. And one of my buddies, I probably shouldn't say his name because I didn't ask him, but one of my boys that
We're gonna figure out who it is.
Right.
But it was great. I mean, one of my boys I was rolling around with, he was saying he was atheist, right? And we were going to Standing Rock together. We were going to all these different places and all around the country. And we realized he was always talking about he was atheist, and I was back then, you know, subscribing to this other, you know, I was trying to figure out what Christianity meant to me. And he said, and it was so unexpected to me, because he like balked at, he was just laugh at any sort of religion, right? He was like,
That's his laugh.
And he said, I think I found my religion. I was like, what? He said, it's activism. It's liberation. And I was like, shit, you right. Because these people who are shunned by the church, right, are the people that I've been rolling around with all around the country. They're queer folk, you know, gender non-conforming folks, you know, people who have open relationships and, you know, things that the church would be like, you going to hell, right? And they exemplify the teachings of Jesus and who Jesus was more than anybody I've ever seen on a pulpit, right? And so when he said that, I was like, you're right. I think I found my religion too.
No doubt. I have a book out called Vibrate Higher, and I have a whole chapter on religion. And I was raised, you know, Baptist. I'm a black person in America, so the chances are that you're going to be raised Baptist. Right. You know, and I went through all these transitions. I read Malcolm X. I dabbled in 5% philosophy. I dabbled in atheism. You know what I'm saying? And what I figured out, and the last line of the book is a quote from Abraham Lincoln, where he said, "My religion is compassion." You know, and that's the same thing, because you know, to be compassionate is to be an activist.
Yeah. You have to. If it doesn't move you to action, right, it ain't really that type of compassion.
That's right.
It ain't the compassion you need.
That's right.
I love now that in 2021, you don't have to be like a specific religion, because I was raised Muslim. I started going to Christian churches as an adult, but every time I would go in, they were like, "Oh, you're gay, you're going to hell." And I would like walk out. I'm like, I'm definitely not Christian. But now it's like, wouldn't say I belong to any religion, but I definitely know who God is. I have my relationships. But now it's like a lot more people are like, oh, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious.
Yeah, and there's when you are involved in liberation, when you go out, and especially these radical liberation groups, you know, that are actually about freeing people and, you know, abolishing capitalism and police and, you know, any of these oppressive systems, there's no doubt when you're there doing this work that there's a spiritual existence that connects us, right? That our liberation is linked together, and that's a spiritual journey. Even in the healing process, as we're all seeking healing for our communities that have been targeted for so long, you're like, that's a metaphysical process.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. You had a key role on season 2 of How to Get Away with Murder. Caleb Hapstall. Criminals everywhere stop wearing Fitbits after you got caught. Do you know why Caleb murdered his adopted parents?
I don't.
I don't think anybody does. I was looking this up on the internet, and I couldn't figure it out.
What backstory did you come up with why he might have done it?
So I went into an interview one time. I can't remember who it was with, and they were like, "Is Caleb and his sister based off of the Menendez brothers. And I was like, no. And then I went back after the interview and I looked it up. I remember she just looked at me like, you sure?
You sure? Right.
And I looked it up and I was like, yeah.
Oh, so
definitely.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
The
they were
Menendez
definitely, and I completely forgot. They were
Yeah.
definitely based off of the Menendez brothers. So, you know, the
So maybe the answer is in that.
yeah, it's somewhere in
The
there.
answer's in that.
Yeah, that there was money involved supposedly, but it, you know, there's I don't know. There's that show was fast paced, fast moving, and people's intentions were always questionable.
Right.
Which was part of what kept people engaged.
Right.
So it could have been so many things. It could have not been him.
Right.
You know?
I'm definitely jealous of you because I am absolutely obsessed with Shonda Rhimes. I love all of her work. And one of the reasons why I love her work, not that she's a Black woman, because obviously, but all of her shows are so diverse. And I'm not a person that's like, oh, I just want all Black shows. That's all I want to watch. I want to watch good quality television. And majority of Shonda Rhimes all of Shonda Rhimes shows are good quality television where you can find gay, Black, white, Latinx, Asian, everybody. You literally find everybody. What can you say about working with Shonda Rhimes? And also, can you talk about how she supported Black voices in a system that still today was even more so started out largely white run?
You know, to be real honest, I didn't get a lot of time with Shonda Rhimes because this show was created by Pete. We know Shonda. I met her quite a few times, and she's always been supportive. And Shonda Land has been supportive of me and my activism. And she's broken barriers for a lot of folks and done it unapologetically, which I think is great. And necessary, and yeah, her shows are super diverse. But you know, I actually can watch all Black all the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that you're saying you don't want it, but I'm saying I actually could. I think, and that's one thing that I love about, you know, Insecure and some of these is just like learning through the process of creating and being in a creative environment with all Black folks is how much diversity there is within Blackness and how we could explore that for decades, and it won't ever make up for the invisibility that has been forced on us, right, in Hollywood. But there's so much diversity even within just like, you know, Afro-Latinos and, you know, folks that are, you know, fully Black, but Latinx, right? And like queer folks and gender non-conforming folks and trans folks and the different generations. And, you know, our different generations have wildly different ways of handling things. And I find it super fascinating. But yeah, she's been incredible. Especially an incredible inspiration for me and many creatives. Yeah.
Not to double down, because I do stand by my statement. I do like Black television. Obviously, I will watch all Black television. But what I feel is that I want a world where everything is diverse. I don't think there's just all Black people. There's not just all white people. And I actually enjoy watching all races on TV acting together because that's how the world is. But you are right. It could be all Black TV shows from now until I die, and it still will not make up for anything happened in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a family with white folks in my blood, right? Mexican folks in my blood. Black folks in my blood. So and I grew up in Houston, which is Harris County and Fort Bend are the most diverse counties in the nation, right? So there's so much diversity within that. But I've also met people who are like, I grew up in, you know, the Bronx or whatever, and they were like, I ain't seen no white people, you know, like, you know, or they grew up, I think Barry Jenkins I was listening to a Q&A with Barry Jenkins talking about one of the projects that he did, and I think he was the one, or somebody said that they didn't ever see black folks growing up, like ever. Like he was just, white folks. Didn't ever see white folks until he was 18 and he moved out. And I was like, man, that's incredible. So some people, even within that, right, see the diversity within, you know what I'm saying? Within blackness. And I can do both. Like I love watching other people's experiences. I love learning from other people's experiences. And I know that I could last a long time without seeing anybody else but my black people. And I'd be totally fine watching black stories and exploring the diversity within that because it's endless.
Yeah. Well, shout out to the great Viola Davis.
Yes.
Because you got to work with her, and she made that speech talking about like black Meryl Streep. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like that's what she was speaking to,
Yeah.
right? And it's a shame, but it's also like Viola Davis is so important to our community, and she was recognized in the mainstream with this TV show that you were on. But I remember seeing her get all those awards and being like, oh, she been the one though. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, she's I don't think she intends to do it necessarily, but she's a good teacher. She's a great teacher. She during How to Get Away with Murder, she was just like, she would talk about those things. It wasn't, she was in an interview and she was speaking her mind. She was like, I have the Tony, I have the Oscar, I have the, you know what I mean? And my bank account, my paychecks don't reflect what these other my white counterparts are making astronomically more than me because of A, B, and C. A, B, and C being white supremacy, right?
Yeah.
And so she was, speaking candidly about it, but that's kind of how she literally always is. And she's funny, she's hilarious, like hilarious. And she puts it in context that you're like, man, I didn't think about that. You're right. I need to rethink it. She just asked questions. And it almost was like entertaining herself. She'd be like, what you think about this? And she'd just kind of cock her head to the side and think and wait for your answer. And I'd take it home with me. I'd be like, what do I think about that?
That is a good teacher. That's a good teacher.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a Viola Davis story. I actually met her twice. One time at Fence's premiere when she sat there and was talking to everybody in her slippers because she took her heels off and talked to people for hours. But the time I got to talk to her, because I was mad at that premiere because I just asked her for a picture and realized people were having conversations. I'm like, fuck, I should have had a conversation with her instead of just taking a picture. But I had the opportunity. I did background for an episode, and it was a Soul Train line. So we were dancing down the Soul Train line. And when I tell you she did not go back to her dressing room in between each setup because they did like so many angles of this Soul Train line, she stood on the line the whole time. If you watch the episode, I'm dancing down the thing with her, but we were standing there and I was right across from her and she was just talking to us about everything under the sun. And I remember how down to earth she was because she was like, it used to be my song, INDMP. It was like, yes, Viola, yes. It's so many actors that act like they don't know where, that they had to start somewhere. That you come on set, you can't look at them, you can't talk to them, you can't even breathe their air. And she was like really in there actually answering questions about the business while we're doing background.
Yeah, I think at her heart, she's like a country black girl. She was like, we used to have country competitions. She'd be like, well, my family did this and that. And I'd be like, well, my family did this and that. And she won. She
more country than you.
Yeah. Which is not an easy feat.
Okay, word up. My guilty pleasure is The Flash.
Okay.
Like, I love this show. This show is silly as fuck. It really is. But I love it. Yeah. It's the type of thing where I put on and it's like I could just escape from my problems I'm dealing with today.
Yeah.
And so I saw you. I watched it. I'm such a fan that I was watching. I haven't seen this new season, but I was watching them as they came out.
Yeah.
And I saw you as Dominic Lance, as Brainstorm. And, you could read in Hack Minds. And at one point, you had to switch bodies with Clifford DeVoe and The Thinker. That was like some soul snatching shit. That was like Get Out. Did you see that parallel?
Yeah, okay. I absolutely did. I don't think they did. But when I came to set, I was like, y'all realize this is like Get Out, right?
This is Get Out.
It's literally the same thing as Get Out. Yeah.
That was ill. I was peeping that. I was like, I always wanted to know if they did that, because I know some of that shit they get from the comic. But it was interesting for you to be a black man in that role for me.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if they considered it, but I'm pretty sure they didn't, from what I remember. But I think one of the writers were black, if I remember correctly, and I was talking to him about it, and he was like, I realized it afterwards. I think that's what happened. But yeah, it was an uncanny parallel.
Yeah, I have a song called 9.5 with Styles P. And I got a song. I got the lyric is, indeed we take the planet for granted. Bulldozer granted as Standing Rock. We plundered and we wonder why the planet's hot. You were at Standing Rock.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience and what made you want to show solidarity in that particular situation.
I mean, it's kind of what you said. Like, it's, you wondering why the world, even on a macro scale, if you expand that, right, you wonder why the world is the way it is, and we're participating in these systems, right, that are making the world the way it is, in all the terrible ways that it is. Eventually, at the time I was, like, campaigning for Bernie Sanders and, like, really joined that campaign because I saw an opportunity to expand the Black Lives Matter movement on, through this campaign, through my own influence, whatever I could use, and to challenge that campaign to do even more, right? And I met a bunch of young indigenous youth, right, through actually kind of outside an offshoot of the campaign, me and Rosario Dawson, Shailene Woodley, Mike De La Rocha, who's a co-founder of my nonprofit, and Nomiki Const. We all went up and down California to the most disenfranchised areas. We met in the old, what is this church in San Jose where Cesar Chavez started the UFW.
Okay.
We met there with all these youth indigenous activists, and they were telling us we made a promise, like, we're listening to your experiences and we're gonna amplify them, and one of them was around Standing Rock. And so it was months before the explosive media circle around Standing Rock that took a lot to get there, because people were trying to ignore it for so long. And these kids were highly just so impressive, man. Just so impressive. And I made a commitment. And then I saw the police brutality happening out there. I saw them being attacked with private security, with dogs and such, and then, with state-sanctioned violence, right? To protect these corporations. And that were harming the earth, right? So where's the crime, right? And it shows that our legal system is set up not to reduce crime, not to provide any sort of justice, right? And so I wanted to go out there and highlight the solidarity with indigenous folks, and that we weren't just talking about police brutality in our community. We're talking about abolishing police altogether, because look at what's happening, right? Look at how they're desecrating sacred sites. Look how they're abusing folks. Look how they're oppressing folks in front of our eyes, and the media is trying to cover it up.
Yeah, word.
Matt McGorry, a fellow actor and activist, was the first to call you an abolitionist. And at the time, you didn't understand the word, but now it's clear you're a committed abolitionist. Can you take us through the meaning of that word and walk us through how you came to accept the term when referring to yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was the first to ask me if I identified as an abolitionist, and at the time, like, we were trying to figure it out together, right? We were like, we heard Dr. Melina Abdullah talking about we don't need police, and I said, hold on, wait a minute, like,
she came on this very program and said that.
Yeah, I was like, hold on, wait, goddamn on a minute, because we're always taught we need police. Like that's what is a world without police? What is a world without prisons, right? And it's made synonymous with safety. It's almost like punishment and accountability. We don't think of those things as separate concepts. But accountability is so much more than punishment. And punishment is the only type of accountability that we're taught, right? In order to teach your kids, you gotta hit them or, traumatize them in some other way, right? So that they can avoid other trauma. It's like, there's gotta be other ways, right? And the same thing with our systems, our legal system is all punitive. It's all punishment. And the more I listened, the more I learned, the more I allowed myself to be led by people who were far more dedicated than any politician that I had met or seen or heard. Far more dedicated than any pastor, right, that I had seen or heard. I saw these people in the streets putting their lives on the line, putting their bodies on the line to liberate folks, to bring attention to what I had experienced as a kid, right? Being beat up by cops, being harassed by cops. And things that we all knew. Right. And we just kind of made excuses in our own rules to kind of try to protect each other, which is what it boils down to. We keep us safe.
Yes.
At all times, right? We, ultimately, that's what it boils down to, is it's up to us to keep each other safe and to protect each other and to heal each other. The police, the way I see abolition is the easiest way I can explain abolition. Since we've been talking about church so much, right? You've been to church, right. You heard a good seed produces a good tree, produces good fruit. A bad seed produces a bad tree, produces bad fruit.
That's right.
A bad seed will always be that, right? Policing was slave catching.
That's right.
That was the seed, slave catching. You could reform it. You could dress it up, put some makeup on it. You could hire Taylor Chanel to try to make the thing look good, right? Look better and sound better. They could steal our terminology and say, we're trying to reimagine this and that, right? But they're always going to be the same thing.
Exactly.
That's right.
Slave catchers. And they're catching slaves and putting them right into slavery, which is prison, under the guise of the 13th Amendment, right? That you can abolish slavery except for if they commit a crime. And who defines the crimes, right? And so the way I look at abolition is uproot those bad seeds, those bad trees that produce bad fruit that started with bad seeds, and plant new seeds that are good, that are founded in the things that actually keep us safe. Care, right? Education, housing. When you go to the suburbs, jobs, right? Job security, those types of things. When you go to the suburbs, when you go to wealthy suburbs, right? When you go to wealthy white areas, you don't see a bunch of cops.
Yeah.
If cops kept us safe, then all these Fortune 500 CEOs would move to the hood. They'd be fighting over spots in the hood because they're like, that's where all the cops are. Shit, I need to get this thing on whatever and whatever, right? And they're not.
Yeah.
Right? And so abolitionists believe it's a continuation of what we were fighting for, what our ancestors were fighting for during the more blatant slavery times, right? Where we had shackles on our ancestors' feet, and we were in the fields and we were owned in a more blatant way,
That's
right? In a more blatant display. Back then, they were fighting to make sure everyone was free. No one is free until everyone is free.
That's right.
Everyone's still not free today. So where did all the abolitionists go?
That's right. Like Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Absolutely.
And to take that seed and tree and fruit metaphor even further, the first thing they say to justify terrible policing, which terrible policing is actually just them maintaining the status quo, right?
right.
They're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
But they say, well, that's a
It's
bad
not a
apple.
broken system.
Right? They say this is a bad apple. This is a rotten apple.
Right.
But the whole axiom is one bad apple spoils the whole bunch.
Right.
So if you just are stopping at the bad apple. You're not taking it to the full extent. Like, well, that bad apple, if you have a bad apple, what the farmer does, start the whole bunch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, man. That leads me to talking about you curating a pro-Black acting career, which I feel like is not an easy task,
Right.
but is very rewarding. I remember when going to Brooklyn Tech in high school, and in New York, we had close proximity to the Law and Order set. Law and Order was around when I was in high school.
Right.
And I remember seeing my friends who were into acting start to get little roles as thugs and goons on Law and Order. And I know that as a Black actor, one of the first things everybody has to do is CSI or Law and Order or some type of these cop shows, right? So can you break down why the term Law and Order itself is a racist term, and talk to us about how Hollywood is complicit in anti-Black racism?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. It's deep. It's deep because if you talk about Law and Order, and we're talking about, Miriam Kaba is an incredible abolitionist and teacher. Really broke down the difference between harm and crime, right? Because all harms are not considered crimes, and all crimes do not cause harm, right? So what are we really doing? And so when you think about laws were put in place, and really, to be honest, I said this on the panel the other day, right? And people got they got their goose pimples coming. But America, as much as our government don't want to say it, but America was founded as a white supremacist institution.
Oh, yeah.
We are occupying currently indigenous land, right? Still occupying this land, right? Forcefully. Our ancestors were stolen from Africa. Our labor was stolen. We were abused. And all of these systems, laws, and order was placed on top of that foundation to keep that foundation going, to make sure that Black folks didn't get the reparations in any way, whether they took it
or
otherwise, and that indigenous folks didn't retaliate and rebel. And since the foundation of Hollywood, Hollywood has, I think our first blockbuster was Birth of a Nation.
That's right. And tell them what Birth of a Nation was about.
Birth of a Nation was celebrating the Ku Klux Klan.
It was a commercial for the KKK.
And if I'm right,
won all the awards, right?
Yeah, and won all the awards, got all the money.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, it also pushed a resurgence in KKK membership and action all around the country. So it was effective. And Hollywood hasn't ever stopped being that effective. It pushes policy. It is, whether they like it or not, they say they're not being, they're being apolitical or whatever. They're not. It's not. Nothing's apolitical. And so it's continued to create and perpetuate anti-Black stories. And one of the ways it does that is just systemically. We don't have autonomy over our stories. Every note you get is going to come down the pipeline from some capitalist institution. And capitalism in its foundation is anti-Black, especially in this country. And so it's going to come down the pipeline through this capitalist institution. The people that are greenlighting the projects who have final say-so are going to be white.
Right.
And they're going to answer to the stakeholders, whoever the stock, whoever owns the most stock or whatever, right? So that system is anti-Black. And it won't, right now you got all these diversity and inclusion, task forces, which, hey, people burning down buildings last summer and, scared white folks enough at the top that they said, finally, okay, fine, you could have your diversity and inclusion task force and we'll say Black Lives Matter. So we won that. the institutions haven't given us anything. There hasn't ever been a day where the oppressor woke up and was like, you know what, you're right. I'm wrong. Right?
That ain't never gonna happen.
We demanded it. We fought for it. We got it. At the same time, so I want to acknowledge that as a win for us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it ain't nearly enough.
No.
And what they're avoiding more than anything, and I've experienced this more and more every day, is avoiding a shift in power. Avoiding a shift in power. Our safety, as they're reconsidering and reimagining our safety in these institutions, it can't exist. We can't be safe without a shift in power towards those who have been most oppressed.
Yeah. That's why you started Build Power.
Yeah.
To have more Black representation on set in these executive offices. Tell me about your partners and that organization.
So I started, co-founded Build Power with Tia Osho, who was one of the original members of Black Lives Matter, Black Alliance for Just Immigration. She's an incredible organizer, just dope person altogether. And Mike De La Rocha, who founded Revolve Impact and has been incredibly influential in transforming the legal system, and he started Schools Not Prisons, that campaign, and abolishing the school to prison pipeline. He's done incredible work there and in so many other places. Anyway, we founded it together because we were doing a lot of work trying to organize, our folks, Black and brown folks in the entertainment industry, because we all had our relationships there. And we finally said, let's systemize this. So back in 2018, we sought out some funding and started to build this nonprofit initiative to organize entertainment, the entertainment industry, athletes and actors and executives and folks, in that because of the power, what we were just talking about, because of the influence and the power of this storytelling machine that we have through music and art. And I truly believe, one of my favorite sayings is, there is no revolution without art.
That's right.
And so that's why what we do every day, and we've been expanding, and it's been incredible to be a part of it. And we partner with dope, radical organizers and organizations that are about the liberation of our people. And last year, of course, one of our main collaborators, which have been like that for years, was Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, and being led by their work, by Dr. Melina Abdullah and Patrice and so many others. We had the privilege to be out there in the streets with them every Wednesday, at least every Wednesday, sometimes Saturdays, sometimes, other days too. But we're just very proud of that work. Very proud of that work. And there's been other, work that we've done with immigration and environmental racism and such. But last year, I think, was a special year for everybody, and we took it to the next level.
Yeah.
I personally want to thank you, that open letter, especially because, I'm in the entertainment industry. So I feel like it was directly, talking about that. And it's crazy how little bit of Black representation. We were just talking about in the dressing room how there's no Black hairstylist. You go to the makeup chair, they don't have your foundation color. And then I did background for like 4 years or whatever. Before Talib saved me and put me on the show. But anyway, I did background. And it's very frustrating because you get on there and, number one, there's only like 5 other Black people on there. And there's tons of white people, and they're using like tons of white people and then one of each minority every time. And then it's like, if you pay attention, which I do because I like to see how the cameramen talk, how the ADs talk, how the directors talk, they're like, oh, I need something that looks like that. And it's like they need one Black person and that's it. Like they get all 5 of us just so they can meet their quotas, but they're not utilizing us. And it's like as if Black people don't exist walking down the neighborhood blocks. And that's on just the small scale. Yeah,
we realized, as we were out there in the streets getting beat up and all kinds of mess last year, that we were teaching and preaching to folks that how do you affect change? How do you be a part of this movement? And it always boiled down to organizing your folks in your sphere of influence, in your workspace, in your family, in your neighborhood, whatever it is. And we were challenging ourselves. I'm like, well, my space is Hollywood, right? What do we do? And we see all of these studios and corporations hashtagging Black Lives Matter. And it's like, all right, well, if you're going to hashtag it, prove it. Because it ain't just about that hashtag and some donation that you've been given. We're going to take your money. But, you know, what are you doing to be a part of the liberation movement? We need to move beyond diversity and inclusion into liberation, right? And what does that look like? That looks like divesting from police. That looks like, you know, why are police on sets? Why do we have police on sets? Why? If
I really like that part of the letter.
Yeah. What and there's local. If this is the hub, LA is the hub of Hollywood of the entertainment industry. And so many people, Waukesha Wilson and Kenneth Ross Jr. and so many of our folks here in Los Angeles are being killed by police. And the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department are some of the most corrupt in the world. They are corrupt as hell.
Always have been.
Yeah, always have been. And I think when I moved to LA, they were under a consent decree. So we were like, y'all are talking about this like it's only happening where Breonna Taylor is. Like it was only happening where George Floyd is. It's happening right here in this city. And y'all have policy that y'all can change here, and you have a lot of influence here. So do that. Amplify the People's Budget LA. Amplify the work that BLM-LA is doing, and LA Can and these other dope organizations here. And then also purge anti-Blackness from your institution and support our people and our art,
right,
and our careers. And we wanted to make sure that we always acknowledge that whatever the solution is has to be connected to the streets and our communities. It's not just some high-level talk that we're talking about, scripts and art, which is extremely important. But it also has to, it directly translates. The work that y'all do, the anti-Black work that y'all put out directly translates to violence against our communities. And so whatever work you're gonna do to mitigate that damage and to heal folks has to be directly related to the work going on in the streets, and it has to directly affect people in our communities.
That's right. Issa Rae, somebody you work with, I consider her a superhero.
She is.
Whenever younger artists ask me how to break into the business, I often tell them, pay attention to what Issa Rae has done and what she's doing. I first heard of her when The Diary of an Awkward Black Girl came out. I have a bookstore in Kiru Books. I was selling a book. Then I went backwards. And so, I don't know when if the YouTube show was before the book or after the book. But just tell me about working with Issa Rae and what lessons you've learned from what she's doing.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like you were saying, like, if you look at how anti-Blackness permeates and continues to thrive in these institutions, there's nobody in the dressing room, there's nobody in the hairstyle. There should be checks and balances everywhere. And it's not just about the skin color, it's also about the ideology, right? Because we don't, we know that all skin folk ain't camp folk. You know what I'm saying? And they will often, as we were campaigning against Jackie Lacey, right?
Yes.
Last year. It's like, and you got Cameron, what's his name? Cameron, over Breonna Taylor's case.
The Attorney General?
Yeah, whatever. His
I don't
ass.
remember his name. I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, some people would call them coons, but it's
Are you people?
It's just
some people.
It's a system. I tend to have empathy for my people, but I also have to call them what it is. I have to call it what it is.
I'll be honest with you. I'm quick. I'm a little too quick with that word, but with him, I think it's accurate.
Yeah. Listen.
Sometimes I'll be too quick.
I like to keep family conversations, family, right? And I say a bunch of stuff when I know white people are not going to be involved in the conversation about us.
That's right.
And I do my best to call people in before I call them out. And then every once in a while, you just got to, you know what I'm saying? You're doing so much damage.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the way the systems operate, they are going to pick who they believe will compromise the most and operate in service of white supremacy, in service of keeping and maintaining their power. They will make sure that we, Malaika Jabali, I think she said, she had a tweet or something that said, you know, they will appease us. She said, meeting the material needs of Black people would upend capitalism, and so they appease us with hypervisibility instead, right? And so they try to get the people, they seek out the people that they know will not challenge their power. And that's how those people end up in those situations. Either way, I feel like they slipped up with Issa.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the point I'm coming to.
She is the exception to the rule that proves the rule exists.
Yeah, she is. I think she's incredibly effective at building us up, right? And what's so impressive about, I talk about this a lot when people ask me about Insecure, what I think one of the most impressive things about Insecure is, one, it highlights our humanity, the gray areas. We're either, my lawyer, John Miggs, he's Black dude, incredible. He'll say we're either portrayed as superhuman or subhuman. That's how most of, throughout the history of our stories being told, I
just called Issa a superhero too.
I know. I was thinking the same exact thing.
But here's what's cool about it, though. And some of us can be seen that way. But here's the thing about it, and I don't think she sees herself like that at all. But he's like, we're either portrayed as superhuman or subhuman. We're not given that gray area in between. And that's how we've been portrayed throughout the history of white supremacy having control over our narratives, right? And I love the fact that Insecure is literally, and that's what the purpose of it was. I think she just posted a clip the other day of what she originally said she wanted it to be, and that was just us. Yeah, we just are who we are, and all of our insecurities and all of our
all of it.
There's this gray area that we exist in, and
the freedom to be wrong, the freedom to be a mess, the freedom to be insecure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the people, it travels
very
behind
human.
the scenes.
Yeah.
It's not like, while I think everybody is extraordinary on the show, behind the scenes, I think they're all really dope people, but they're really us. They're just like us existing in our genius, right? Existing in who we are and who we have to be. And they're Black people from all walks of life behind the scenes. People who are formerly incarcerated, people who don't have the education that the white supremacist institutions make us think that we need in order to achieve success, right? There's people who are queer, Black, whatever, different shades, different walks of life. And not only does she do it with who she hires, but then she invests in the community. She looks at Black designers, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Black, everybody. And that has been a very unique experience that inspired me to say, it's not necessarily a show about activism, but it is an activist's project.
I love that when she said, I'm rooting for everybody Black, and you go on the set of Insecure, and it's literally everybody Black.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the after effect. I was in a hotel room the other day, and I was like gonna put on I didn't feel like looking at the shows on my computer. I was like, I'm just gonna put on HBO. They had HBO in the hotel. I'm just gonna watch whatever's on HBO until I fall asleep. And I couldn't fall asleep because it was all this programming that was obviously inspired by Issa Rae. It was like Insecure, and then there was a commercial for Sam J's show, right? And then it was a Black Lady Sketch Show.
Black Lady Sketch Show.
Black Lady Sketch Show, and then it was which I watched that episode of Black Lady Sketch Show, and then it was this show, I don't know the name of, but about black skateboarders in Brooklyn. There was a commercial for that. And I'm like, wait a second, 4 shows that center around black women.
Yep.
And you know what? It can't just be Issa. It has to be the whole environment of what this movement has created. But to know that she's in a position at HBO to be influential, and I see the direct influence immediately, it was healthy for me.
Yeah, she's got, you got Denise Davis and Prentice Penny and like all these incredible folks behind scenes, Amy Aniobi, Natasha Rothwell. There's so many incredible people behind the scenes. And the culture has been revolutionary.
Yeah.
Not only considering, it's what I was just talking about, it's just not only considering who you're hiring, but the impact that you're having on the community at large. Because you could easily say, so many people in LA are like, I'm not gonna go south of the 10. You know what I'm saying? It's
she's
like
in the hood.
they're in Inglewood, they are in our, Ladera, they're in wherever they have to be in the jungles, like making sure that people are humanized, that it's just who we are, and they are paying people what they should be paying them, right? They're making sure that we utilize and support the businesses that are there, that have been there for a long time. Esawam Books, celebrating folks,
That's
right?
Family right there.
So it goes far beyond, because she has so much love for her community and where she grew up, right, and her people. It goes far beyond just the impact that she's directly having on the people that work on the project.
Your character on Insecure is bipolar, and I believe your brother is also bipolar. I want to talk about the pandemic and how it's really impacted mental health and what people can do to heal themselves, especially marginalized people that wouldn't have access to healthcare and resources that would help them with their mental health issues.
Yeah. So a large part of why I'm so passionate about mental health is seeing what my brother went through, and so many people in my family. We've got, paranoid, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder. There's so many different mental health journeys in my family, and including my own, right? And so seeing misdiagnoses and poorly treated people that don't have access to certain treatments, and then others that have access to treatments that are problematic, really inspired me to change that. And seeing how much healing needs to be done.
Right.
Like trauma has been forced on our communities, and that trauma was exacerbated and highlighted in the pandemic. And seeing our people, you wonder, why a lot of us are sick, and then you see we're being disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and then we're being criminalized for wearing masks, and then we're being criminalized for not wearing masks, right? And then you're seeing all of the videos of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, whoever else, Sean Reed, and we still haven't recovered from the other videos pre-pandemic, and our own generational trauma.
Right.
And so we have more of a need than anybody else, especially Black and Indigenous folks, to heal. And so, as far as resources are concerned, the Build Power team put together a list of some resources for folks that can't afford, whether it's therapy or non-traditional forms of like talk therapy and such, but different healing services and mental health resources. And you can go to buildpower.com and look under mental health resources for that. And we started a program called Liberate Mental Health for that purpose. And one of our creative director, Jacqueline, put together this incredible event last week where we partnered with Walk Good LA and Dive In Well and Prosperity Market, where they were brought together all these products, this produce from Black farmers around the area, locally sourced. And we did yoga, meditation, sound bath in the park. 300 to 400 Black folks, Black and brown folks, just healing together. And that what we talked about, and this is what I think is most important, is that was the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month. We hear a lot of people talking about mental health awareness.
Yeah.
We hear which is important. We need to be aware. We need to break down stigma. But beyond destigmatization, beyond awareness, we need to connect it to the liberation movement. We have to accept that abolition is necessary in order to liberate people's mental health, because we have systems that were built up to target and exacerbate our trauma and our mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you went through something that is traumatic for many people. It was traumatic for me to watch. On your IG Live, you were attending a peaceful protest for George Floyd. You were attacked by the police. They shot rubber bullets at you, point blank, beat on you with the baton. You were shot all in your leg. Your friend who was with you, I think he had a fractured skull.
Dion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was stressful. It was very violent. It made me think of my situation in Ferguson. I've been a part of things like that before, but when I went to Ferguson, I was in a similar situation, but I didn't get shot. I didn't get beat on with a baton. It got right to that point.
Yeah.
And you didn't back down. No, you put your body in harm's way to protect others, even after you were attacked. You refused to let the police make excuses. You called them out by names: Lopez, Weir. You did all this while documenting it, which you didn't miss a step. And I think for me, it was refreshing to see that direct action liberation work. It was revolutionary. It was powerful. And I want to thank you for doing that and for sharing that moment. Can you tell us where you were at mentally when that was happening?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think that that's just like what came out right at the moment. And I would love to be like, that's just what was in me.
Right.
But I was trained up for that moment,
You've
right?
been doing this work.
Yeah, we've been doing this work. We've been in the streets. And the only thing on my mind was, I know what the police are going to do to cover this up and say that they didn't do what they're doing right now. I know that the truth needs to be told. I know I need to keep recording. And I know that people can be hurt, and I need to do whatever I can to mitigate the damage, to lessen the damage as much as possible. I have a platform, I got to use it. Whatever privilege I have, if it's male privilege, if it's size, whatever it is. And there was one Black woman in particular who was probably stronger than me, pulling me back, stepping in front of me, and I'm like trying to step in front of her. And it was incredible. It wasn't the first time I had been in a situation like that. It was the first time the rubber bullet hit me. It hit people next to me, and I've been sprayed with mace and that type of, especially at Standing Rock, and have experienced other police brutality within Standing Rock and protests, but in life, right? Being pulled out of my car at gunpoint and shit like that. But at that point, they made a point to target me and said, we ain't gonna let up, right? And so I got hit at least 7 times, right? And still have all these scars, and my body looks differently than it did before that day. And of course there's mental trauma, because it's just like, how far are they gonna go? Are they gonna pull out guns at some point? Whenever you're in the streets, there's always a potential, when you're going up against the most violent system in the country that has autonomy to kill you. You've watched a video and know that police are killing people with immunity, and then you decide to go up against them. So you know that this is violence. You know that there's a potential to be harmed, or to end up to not come back, right? To end up dead. And so there's already trauma going in and anxiety going in, and coming out of it. Obviously, there was far more. Just waking up with adrenaline and just like trying to recover after that, and knowing that we still have to move forward. We got work to do.
Speaking of Patrice, she's been in the news a lot lately.
Yeah.
We had Patrice on this show, and she very eloquently and efficiently cut through a lot of the malarkey and the rumors about Black Lives Matter.
Right.
This George Soros rumor. They're
Right.
not funded by Soros.
Right.
They're anti-family
Right.
because they happen to believe that, the LGBTQ community also has rights and also has Black people in it. Right. And all the things you've said on the show about that community being at the forefront of this movement is absolutely true from my experience as well. Me as someone who has participated when I can, I see that. And that's not to say that there's not straight people there.
Right.
But straight people are overrepresented. They're just like we are in every place.
Right.
So these new rumors, though, I'm so not frustrated, but I'm just so like I don't know how to describe it, because it's so easy if you care to understand the truth. So this new thing with Patrice, where it's like these properties. The New York Post reported this story. It broke in the New York Post. Well, if you're from New York City, you know we don't fuck with the New York Post. If you're politically aware, you know it's Fox News Corps, Rupert Murdoch. So you already know where they coming from, what their angle is. New York Post has never been actual journalism in my world. So already I'm like, okay, it's the Post. Then they interview some guy who says, I was a member of Black Lives Matter. I'm like, really? A member of Black Lives Matter who's big enough to be interviewed by the Post, who's from New York, and I ain't never heard of him? That sounds fishy to me.
Right.
So I looked up this guy. The way you could do it is people telling themselves. So I went to his Twitter account. And this guy is anti-Black Lives Matter. He's part of the Black Lives Matter of Greater New York. But the things that he's posting on his Twitter, I know what their agenda is on their website.
Right.
I know who they show solidarity with. I know this guy ain't that.
Right.
He's never been to the Black Lives Matter website. I could tell. Then they talk about she got these properties and this and that. I'm like, this woman is a best-selling author and a professor.
Right.
She not supposed to use her hard-earned money.
Right.
And then when I saw her get interviewed by Mark Lamar Hill, the main thing they focused on was this purchase in the Bahamas. Supposedly she went to look at this property in Bahamas. She's like, I ain't been to the Bahamas since I was a little kid. So I'm like, that's not just misinformation. That's disinformation.
Right.
That's on purpose.
Right.
And then I see so many people in our community falling for it.
Right.
Just falling for it, just like with no type of research, no type of digging on the surface. And look, I can't think of one person on earth that I agree with about 100% of things.
Right.
It's not one person. I think that's an insane metric to measure somebody by.
Right.
I agree. I don't agree with some things they said, so I can't fuck with them at all.
Right.
There is no organization that's perfect doing this liberation work. There is no human that is not flawed. So I think it's actually ridiculous and very anti-Black that I even have to say that. That the metric for them has to be like, look, they ain't perfect, okay?
Right.
And they have to live at this level of scrutiny that I can't even imagine. So now I see Patrice step down, and now that story becomes weaponized.
Right.
So it's like, yo, she can't. And when I was like, okay, she stepped down. I want to know why she stepped down. I look at it. She stepped down to focus on other things. She's been there for years. And now they got Monifa Bandelli, who I came up in the game with. And I know Monifa's work very well. And I see Monifa's going to take that position. Oh, we good.
Right.
But now that story becomes, oh, the lady from Black Lives Matter quit. And it's just like, I just wanted to give you a chance to speak on all that because you work so closely with them.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Patrice, I've known for years. She is one of the hardest working, hustling Black liberators in the world. She's incredible. I don't understand how she does it.
Right.
You know, she's got her art. She's an artist.
That's right.
She was a dancer, right? But she's a visual artist. She has Crenshaw Dairy Mart, which is doing incredible work. They have galleries, right? She founded that together. She co-founded Dignity and Power Now. She co-founded Justice LA. And what she does, she's actually an incredible institution builder. That's what Maria Banji talks about. She's an incredible organizer as well. Maria said, Patrice, what I love most about Patrice is she's an incredible institution builder. What she does, and what I've been trying to learn how to do, is she sees a need, and she says, nobody's organizing around this. Well, I'm going to create the infrastructure. I'm going to pull together talent and folks that I know are incredible at this work, and I'm going to put them in that infrastructure. I'm going to mentor them. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure they have the proper resources to change what we see, whether it's prisons, whatever it is. And then she says, my job is done here. The leadership is there. I'm moving on to the next. Now it's Justice LA. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm here for a few years. Now I see that Black Lives Matter needs an ED. Now I'm here. We threw a party in 2019 because she was leaving BLM Global Network because she had other things to do. She had a book. She had Crenshaw Dairy Mart. She has a first look deal. She's creating stories with Warner Brothers. She has another book coming out now on abolition. It's like, and she's a professor, right? She has a class to teach. I mean, most people would tap out with one of these jobs.
That's right.
But she came back in 2020 because they said, after she left, that literally threw a party, she was like, this is too much. I have too much going on. I need to focus my energy here and here, and I've done what I need to do here. Here's the leadership. Let's put that in place. Then 2020 came, and they said, can you come back? She said, okay. She came back through this rapid response that we needed, and then she was like, it's time to go. And right when she's like, it's time to go, let me put this leadership in place, all these attacks start coming. Which, here's my one thing about it is I'm like, they're saying that they're mansions.
Yeah.
I've been in them. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, the house that she's been in forever, that she got proprietorship of her brother, and I don't want to reveal too much of her information, but she's got proprietorship of her brother who has severe mental health issues, and this is a space where he can heal, right, with family. That place, I could run from the front to the back of that place in less than 30 seconds. Okay, these ain't mansions, right? And it's incredible how much she loves her people and how much the history of Black liberation has been to divide us and sow distrust and disbelief in the correct solutions in abolition, right? And there's a history of this for a long time of like exposing personal details of Martin Luther King's life, and they want you to focus on the infidelity as opposed to we liberating people. Right? No, ain't nobody saying they're perfect.
Right.
But like you said, we don't ever have to say that about white people.
That's right.
Ain't nobody perfect.
Right.
You donate to the Red Cross every single time there's a disaster. Look up how many controversies the Red Cross has been, how many times they've mishandled funds. And every single time. There's all these institutions, these nonprofits that we don't question one bit. They have hundreds of millions of dollars coming in. And Black Lives Matter Global Network gets in a couple million and y'all are like, hold on now. What y'all doing with this money?
And it'd be people who didn't contribute shit.
Right.
It's like, okay, if you contributed, you might have the right to ask. But these people who wasn't planning on contributing shit.
I don't even have a problem with the asking. It's like asking and being like, nah, you cancel. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know. I don't trust this shit. But you go in with that same hand and donating to these white institutions that are doing problematic shit and have been and have a record of it, right? And it's okay to question. It's okay. Accountability.
That's
the
right.
problem is we don't separate accountability from punishment.
That's right.
They just start condemning.
And we think the only way to hold people accountable is punishment. Questions are accountability.
It all came back around.
All comes back around. Absolutely. Question.
Yeah.
Also realize that in order, I'm building I'm doing my best to build a nonprofit right now. It's taken 6-7 months just to go through the recruiting process for one role, to go through resumes and have interviews and finally hire somebody. And we haven't even onboarded people yet, right? And you're saying the money came in summertime last year and you're expecting them to have all their shit together for all their questions. They probably haven't even hired the right accounting team yet to go through this. You get what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying that that's 100% true. I'm not involved in Black Lives Matter Global Network. I'm not an employee. So I can't even come in and say some shit, right? But I do know that they are doing some incredible work. And I know a lot of the people. And I know Patrice has been one of the most amazing people in my life that has taught me what radical community looks like and has always been willing to be held accountable.
Yes.
And we have to understand that in order to get ourselves free, it has to be collective. We have to be connected. We have to realize that our liberation is linked together. And we have to realize that we can't replicate, we can't mimic and copy the systems that we're trying to take down.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're doing. They're like, we don't, like prisons, we can't believe police and prisons operate this way, but I'm gonna treat you just like cops treat me.
Yeah.
Right? Now you are guilty until proven innocent.
That's right. That's right.
You feel me? And I'm like, why are y'all treating? And we don't even realize that this is our conditioning. So it's a lot of work that has to be done. But I will ride for my people till the end.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I guarantee you that the effect that they've had on my life is unquantifiable. You cannot measure. It's immeasurable. And it's been a profoundly liberatory experience.
That's beautiful. Beautifully put.
Let's talk about you working on Miss Juneteenth with Nicole Beharie. It must have felt familiar because you were in Texas. What was that experience like? And you played a father who had failed his family but had good intentions. Why is it critical to add nuance to the negative stereotypes of Black fathers?
Yeah. You know, I don't necessarily want to say he failed his family. You know, he was trying to find his way.
Yeah.
I know so many of him, right? I know so many of that character within my family, right? And I get mad at him. You know what I'm saying? There's accountability that needs to happen, right? 100%. And speaking of the diversity of Black folks, right? Even within Texas, we shot in Fort Worth. I'm from Mo City. I'm from Houston. We different. So they made that clear. Okay. You know, they used a lot of local folks because Channing is from Fort Worth. She's from the area we shot in. She's the director. And she was like, I'ma hire folks from the streets. Like, these are my people, right? And they came up there and they was correcting me on my accent between takes, and like I was like, all right, I appreciate you. But it was really beautiful to shoot in Texas. I haven't done that since I left when I was 18. And Nicole Beharie is incredible. She's one of the best actresses alive right now.
Yeah.
Alexis Chikezi, who played our daughter, was her first role, and she pulled out. She just showed the genius that lives in our Black community. She came up, she showed up, and she did what she had to do. But yeah, I know us, and I love the gray area. Even there's so much that was left on the editing room floor. I want people to read that original script and how sensitive Channing was to the portrayal of all the characters. But Yeah, I mean, he had touched the criminal justice system, whatever that is, our American legal system, and had so many problems that we know. We know our family experiences. I mean, myself, I don't have real great examples of what a good marriage looks like, what a good relationship looks like, what good parenting is from my father's side. You know, I don't have a lot of those great examples, and I know that this guy didn't either, right? And so I have a lot of grace and sympathy for him, as well as being like, get your shit together.
Get your
bro.
shit together.
You know, and I saw, and especially in the script, how much he loved his daughter, and how much he was always there, and how much he missed the mark. You know what I'm saying? And how, again, we were like, all right, now you missed the mark. Now get your shit together, man.
Right.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, but
think-
I have love. I have a lot of love for him.
Word up.
Yeah.
You say what you gotta say.
I mean, I'm not trying to. I get what you're saying. Don't condemn and to hold people accountable, and that's what I'm trying to do. But it's also like, get your shit together. Like, get your.
Are we getting personal now?
I'm getting personal, which is why I went. That was. I'm about to get personal, so I'm gonna try and let it slide.
Well, thank you for being such a fantastic guest. I enjoyed this conversation. You walk the walk and talk the talk, and there should be more like you. I got one more question before we let you go, Kendrick. Sampson Studios, what are you doing with that? What sort of stories are you eager to tell?
So Sampson Studios is really transformed to a legal entity so that I can work.
Okay.
Because of the way that they do taxes here.
Okay.
And I wanted that to be the entity, but I found something much far better that I thought is pretty incredible, which shows my growth and my growth and understanding, because Sampson Studios that's my last name, right? Mm-hmm. That's about me. And I started Build Power Productions.
Okay.
Which I thought was much more appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so my impression was Sampson Studios was going to be creative and creating art, but you're saying
Absolutely.
Build Power is going to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
And so now Sampson Studios is my corporation that I can hire, my assistants through, my people do what I need to do on the acting front. And I know it doesn't necessarily need to be a business class, but it allows me to operate in a way that's fiscally responsible. And then I have another corporation that is Build Power Productions that I'm building up the infrastructure right now, looking for talented, executives, producers, and people to work with and create with, so that we can acquire different intellectual property and the mandate in it is a collective liberation experience, right? And making sure that it is always connected to community. It holds the name of our nonprofit that is all about liberation and our people. So it's got some accountability baked in with that it has to live up to the standard of the nonprofit, which is pretty incredible and holds me accountable. Every time I say Build Power Productions, I'm not saying Sampson Studio. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
It ain't just about me. It's like, no, you have to think about this and that.
Well, where can people find you at on the World Wide Webs?
Yeah. Build Power, you can go to @BuildPower, which is BLDPWR, @BLDPWR on Instagram. And then buildpower.com, BLDPWR.com. And then, of course, my Instagram is Kendrick38, KENDRICK 38.
Ladies and gentlemen, the People's Party is proud to have Kendrick Sampson. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.